right. Sorry, I'm here to introduce your session. Very happy to have you back as our moderator, Pierre COURTEILLE. We're going to talk about how it is to navigate through rough waters. And I think navigating through rough waters is, of course, something you have to do as an entrepreneur, either business you're in, but of course, if you're in health tech, there are specific things you can pay attention to. And we heard in the previous panel that probably the silver bullet to become and to stay successful doesn't really exist, but I hope that the people on stage can share some strategies we can follow to become and to stay successful. Over to you and your panel.
Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Good afternoon. So I would like first to introduce our speakers. Enrique, Enrique CLAVEROL. So Enrique is head of the Medical Technology Program, European Innovation Council at the European Commission. Benoit van den Hove. Benoit is CEO of Euronext Brussels. And Olivier TAELMAN is CEO of Nyxoah. So if you can introduce yourself in a few, like 2 minutes, that would be great.
I start. So again, my name is Enrique CLAVEROL. I manage the medical technologies portfolio at the EAC. As you might know, the EAC, European Innovation Council, is this new vehicle created by the Commission. It's relatively new, it's only 2 years old. It's kind of unusual in the way that we invest. So we provide non-dilutive funding, which was the classic funding the Commission used to provide. But we now also invest and we take equity positions. It's a relatively large vehicle. It's 1.6 billion per year. So it's kind of an evergreen fund. And again, my role is just to oversee only the medtech, medical devices, digital health part of the portfolio. That's my role.
Hello, my name is Benoit van den Hove. I'm the CEO of Euronext Brussels. I joined Euronext 5 years ago as head of listing, so in touch with many listed companies and companies looking for a listing. And obviously in Belgium we have a very strong life science franchise, so very happy to be here with you.
So my name is Olivier TAELMAN. I'm the CEO of Nyxoah. I spent my first 10 years of career working in the pharmaceutical industry with Eli Lilly's and Novi Aventis. Then I moved to the medtech space for another 12 years working for major corporate companies like Medtronic, and after that I joined the entrepreneurial world, and I'm now leading Nyxoah since the last 4 years. Very short, Nyxoah is a company, medtech, in the medtech company offering an innovative solution to treat obstructive sleep apnea. We went from private to public in 2020. We did 2 IPOs, one on Euronext, one on Nasdaq in less than 9 months, but I'm sure we will come back to this.
Yes, thank you. So first of all, I would like to give to the audience a little bit of a helicopter view of what happened during the last 3 years. So we had this pandemic at the beginning of 2020, and it lasted at least 1 year and a half before countries started to again start back their economy. And during this period, we have seen that the pharmaceutical market stayed quite steady. It stayed in a good shape compared to other industry. Then after that, we started to have the inflation picking up due to the restart of the economy in the world. But at the same time, we could see that while the pharma biotech market was doing well, this, I would say, not bubble, but a kind of readjustment came. But when inflation came, then it hit very hard the biotech, basically. And the second, I would say, when the Ukrainian war started, it was a second inflation due to a conflict came, and it was even harder. And when we look at, for example, because the cost of capital increased, and then investor went to other industry. And when we look at the Nasdaq year to date, it's plus 25%. But if we look at the biotech index, it's minus 20%. So, and we see that with the Middle East conflict going on, it might stay for a little bit longer, that we are in difficulty. The biotech industry may stay in a difficult situation for a while. So my first question would be to you, Enrique, is I'm sure the European Commission is aware of that, and what kind of task, what kind of actions are you taking to help the European entrepreneurs in biotech?
Well, the European Commission is like a huge universe. We're just one vehicle in that universe. So we cover the early stage investment for deep tech. And so this is kind of the main goal of the agency. And in particular in biotech or medtech, so we come really early. So we tend to come in pre-seed, seed early in round A. Those are our stages. And at those stages, we keep doing the same thing. We cover a gap where the risk is very high, liquidity is very low. So we come in saying, okay, the Commission is here to provoke a cascade effect. And I think this will continue. So I think this is useful. It's not a perfect tool, but it's kind of a useful tool because, you know, again, we take a lot of risk and we cover this gap where liquidity is not there. Accelerator investment program is, however, a matching program, so we have to come in with private investors. So that still generates a bit of an issue for the companies where we invest, because when we commit 7, 8, up to 15 million, the company still needs to raise the same amount or a higher amount. That's always an issue. But again, the EAC and the Commission in general is here to help. So we are a bit flexible, and we do lots of convertible notes, which is another good instrument that we have. We can do 1 or 2 year convertible notes. So I think it helps. It's an additional instrument. It's not perfect, though. But
thank you, Enrique. Benoit, we have seen that for the last 2 years, there were basically no IPOs in Europe. The last one 2 years ago was Valneva. Now you have Abivax last week. How Euronext is dealing with this increased cost of capital?
Well, first of all, congratulations once again for the listing last week on Nasdaq. Well, definitely the picture that you made of the macroeconomic environment is putting a lot of pressure on the whole financing chain. I mean, going from the plain vanilla bank loan to the more complex transactions, we see that at all places of this financing chain, there are issues, and that's putting a lot of pressure on the finance teams, but also on companies. We also see today that hitting some companies more hardly these days, also from the old economy, if I can say. Look at what happened to Worldline this morning. And what we see at Euronext is that, well, investors become more and more demanding and have more and more requirements when they want to invest. If you look at the amounts raised for biotechs in the private sector, I think we're above what was done last year. But the amounts are less spread out, so you see a much more divergence among the amounts which are invested into companies. Look at what happened, for instance, in Belgium last week with Agomap. They raised 100 million euros, whereas you have many companies that just seek, well, 30, 40 million euros and have many difficulties to find. So if you don't have a very compelling story, it's a bit more difficult, or if you're not in the right therapeutic area, it's more challenging as well. Looking at what happens on the markets, there again we see different things, and we had the Abivax last week, but we see also more creativity in the tools which are being used by the companies to raise money. Well, you have still the classical public offers and the private placements, but more and more you see these equity lines going up, and there you have also different flavors with different types of investors. Some of these can be much more aggressive and much more dilutive than others, so leading also to some questions. And well, that's for listed companies, but yeah, indeed, IPOs these days. Well, the whole IPO market is under pressure in this period. We not only see it in Europe, but we see it also in the US. It started again in September with some nice transactions, and hopefully this will continue despite the challenges with the interest rates, which remain relatively high and which may still increase, in particular in the US. But I think that at one point in time, this will reopen. This will reopen. Why? Because you have many companies with great projects. You have still a lot of money which is being prepared to be invested. And so let's hope that at the start of 24, companies from the old economy, if I can call them that way, with no tech or no biotech companies, but these companies from the old economy can start again raising money on the markets through an IPO, and that they are successful, and that will open the way for a very successful biotechs, medtechs, health tech companies that are eagerly looking for a listing and funding.
Olivier, how have you been able to navigate through rough water for the last 2 to 3 years? And what have you implemented in your company to be able to continue to sell today?
No, thank you. So first of all, when we are talking about Nyxoah, as I was mentioning, we are a medtech company. We developed a solution to treat obstructive sleep apnea. And why am I saying this? For the simple reason that we are, if you use pharma terms, we have a technology with blockbuster potential. And I'm just saying this to start to answer your question, like how are we navigating through this? So in 2020, we started opening the discussion whether we would move from private company to public company. In September, we did the Euronext IPO. And the key reason behind was that at that time, everything on the market was really favorable in going out to investors and reaching and start raising money. So we did. We raised 89 million euros at that time. And why 89? There are different reasons. Why not more? We were multiple times oversubscribed. But initially, we wanted to make sure that we could finance the company all the way through reaching our important milestones from a clinical perspective, from an R&D perspective. So when we did this in September, after doing this, and we did it once, we really got the appetite in saying, okay, but if we now would like to finance the company all the way through US commercialization, because that's where we see our biggest opportunity, next to Europe also entering and offering a solution for US patients on the US market, we decided to do a second IPO. So we did this 2021, July 2nd, I will never forget, it's a Friday when we were listed on NASDAQ, and we raised another $100 million. So with, let's say, roughly $200 million, we secured our future all the way through US commercialization. And looking back, no, it was really a good decision. Because if you see how everything has changed, the world has completely changed from a business perspective. It has become rough waters. I think this is still an understatement. For some companies, you see that they even have valuations lower than the cash position they are having. So I think with Nyxoah, at that point, even without realizing what would happen in the future, we took a really good and strong decision. Now, that is my first takeaway also for the audience. I think when you want to finance your company and there is an opportunity, don't hesitate. I mean, if the timing is right, if everything is there, don't hesitate and go and raise money and secure your company that you can focus on the most important thing, in our case, developing our technology, also start generating our first revenue in Europe, go in and invest in market access. So I think that is the first thing I wanted to share about where Nyxoah is. Now, that being said, just to give you some numbers, when we did the NASDAQ IPO, we had a company valuation of $750 million. At that point, we generated 0 revenue, and we were just starting our IDE pivotal study in the US. So from a medtech perspective, we really used what was called a biotech approach, where you start raising money without being commercially available, without generating revenue. So that was the second thing that we did different. If you quickly just look at where we are today, our market cap from 750 has become 200. Did we do anything wrong? From an execution perspective, did we face delays? The answer is no. I mean, no. Yes, there was COVID, and yes, we were 3 months delayed in our study, but 3 months in a time frame of 2 years. But illustrating again, I'm extremely pleased that we raised capital at that moment. No. What we do know, being 5 months away from the first major milestone, and that is our data readout in the US, I would know, and everyone knows publicly, that we will have to raise money again. And now the situation has totally changed. To Benoit's point, so a second thing I like to share with the audience is, in 2020, I was only thinking about how much money would we like to raise, and we were even going one step further. Who would we take the money from? That was how luxury the position was. Today, from equity, we are looking at non-dilutive ways of financing. We are looking at convertible loans. We are looking at debt. We are looking at combinations of all this. And my CFO is also with me here today. I'm mainly giving him sleepless nights. And we do something for obstructive sleep apnea, so we know how important it is to sleep well. But I know that he has a lot of sleepless nights in trying to figure out what do we do. You have on one hand finding the balance between dilution, on the other hand also trying to fund your company going forward. And unfortunately, I do not have the right answer today. But there is one thing, and I always try to be a little bit funny, and then I will stop. I try to be a little bit funny and use some quotes. And maybe it's a little bit exaggerated, but if you quote Winston Churchill, when you're going through hell, just keep going. And I think economically, there are different periods. What we do not do at Nyxoah is very simple. We don't look back. We just look forward. And looking forward means we only focus on execution. So we manage our current cash extremely tight. We cut all projects that we don't think will add immediate value. So we try to be very mindful with the cash that we have available. We reward and recognize people who are strongly performing. We communicate a lot. I've never spent, together with Loïc, our CFO, so much time in talking to investors that were very loyal to us from the beginning, to new investors. I even went on a retail roadshow to talk to family offices. I think these are the things that you are obliged to do in this period. It's a lot of hard work, but I'm also seeing the future very optimistic. Once, because we took a decision in 2020 that was helping us today in surviving, to say it like this, to focus on the most important thing. And the next thing, as they're always saying, there will be a change. And if you have a technology that can work and you can execute, I'm sure, and I'm really optimistic that also Nyxoah will be becoming very positive and very strong, also entering the US market.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you allow, I think that today, even more than before, having all the options open in terms of financing, it's really important. Where in the past, non-dilutive funding was maybe seen as the play money for very early stage companies. I think that even more mature companies are reconsidering this position and look at non-dilutive financing coming from the EIC or coming potentially from your public authorities in your respective countries. And this is a real shift in mindset as compared to 2 years ago, where the money was for free and was coming from the sky. You just had to ask for it. People become more and more cautious on all the aspects of raising funds in the different ways of going from non-dilutive to the dilutive ones. So that's a real change that we also observe with listed companies.
Thank you. And Enrique, in Europe, there's 500 million inhabitants compared to the US, 350. We have a huge market, right? Even compared to the US. When the IPO windows are closed right now, like now, and when entrepreneurs are going to discuss with VC that are more and more picky because they want to they want to invest in something, they are assessing the risk very clearly. How, at the European level, can you incentivize the venture capitals to help the investors, the biotech, health tech investors? Because you could decide to help to incentivize the VC, right?
Yeah, on the initial comment on the size of the market is interesting, no? Because it's very large, over 400 million, but it's so fragmented. We also get a lot of that, and partly it's our fault from the Commission side. So one of the things we're doing is filtering projects. So the deal flow that we get goes through multiple evaluations. And I think there is some value in that filtering. We don't do the selection internally. We outsource the selection to experts. So we get a large deal flow with thousands of business plans and early stage research projects, and then they go through various filtering stages. And I think there is some value in looking at the deal flow coming out of that filtering, because it's been qualified to some extent. That's one way in which probably VCs can feel the EAC is helping them feel confident that the investment has been partially de-risked. The other factor, of course, is that we come in with some cash ourselves, and we're saying, look, we are very flexible in terms of valuation, term sheet. We are pretty flexible in many ways. So we tend to be, to some extent, the most flexible people in the meeting room when we discuss what comes next. And I think that helps. We outsource.
I'm more talking about tax incentives.
We're not really, yeah. I mean, those tend to exist at the national level. I mean, it's an add-on, no? But we don't really play that game that much, but that will be there too, yes. So I would say the filtering, the deal flow, the flexibility as co-investors, I think those two elements help, I think, invite VCs to take a little bit of risk with us.
We know that people say that we are less risk adverse in Europe than in the US. We have a lot of tons of money like sleeping. For example, for France, the life insurance, there's roughly 2,000 billion sleeping. If we take only 1% of this money for innovation, it's 20 billion. Why there's not a plan at the European level in order to, again, incentivize the countries to take a little bit of this money, which is sleeping, to put into innovation, which is the future of Europe, which is in play right now. Yeah, on that.
I totally agree. I couldn't agree more. I know that at a national level, there are some things going on that are useful. I mean, in Sweden, where they have incentivized for retail investors to go into the stock market, there are initiatives at the national level, but it's true that at the European level, we need to have a unified strategy to mobilize more capital. I mean, this is clear. One of the ideas is liquidity in the markets, because if you are institutional or retail investor and your money is going to be frozen for, 7, 8 years for medical devices, 10 years for medical devices, that doesn't incentivize. So things like opening up markets for more liquidity for early stage investors, this is something that regulatory players could help with.
Yeah, but you have some financial tools like securitizations and so on that are used in the US in order to keep the tool liquid. And this is something maybe we need to think about. What do you think about that? About the new ways of financing biotechs in order for you as an entrepreneur to have more leverage or leeway?
So first of all, since we are listed on both Euronext and Nasdaq, I think we are in a good position to also compare a little bit the US investors with the European investors. And something that both have in common is they don't like risks too much, so everything needs to be de-risked. And on the other hand, they like to have the highest return. Now, specifically in those rough waters, I do think there is an important role to play for the European Commission. I have to say, if I can be a little bit critical, that sometimes there are a little bit too many angles and clauses connected before you can get whatever loan. I think in times like this, there should be a little bit more trust and confidence and making it a little bit more easy for a company to accept also to go for whatever kind of financing, because you cannot sell your total soul. I mean, just for this, it needs to stay reasonable. So that's one thing. On the other hand, from our side, and when I say our side, I mean from the side of the companies, I also do think that we should create a stronger ecosystem, and I'm learning this when I'm talking with US colleagues, for example. We are sometimes a little bit too modest in the sense that we are bringing in biotech, in medtech, so much innovation. I think we should create and talk a little bit more with each other. And I also think that that would also give more confidence, for example, for investors to invest in the European biotech or medtech in going forward. That's the comment that I can make.
And Benoit, I have a question for you.
Yeah, well, during COVID, I read a book about the Spanish flu of last century. And what was very funny about that book, it was written from a US angle because it started over there. And it was written with a focus on how it all happened in the US. And the interesting thing was that at that time, Rockefeller and all these institutes were not existing yet. And so that meant that all these physicians, medical doctors from the US, well, they had their training in the French, the German, the Belgian universities. The top science was based here. And it's only after the Spanish flu that they started the creation of these institutes and with what has happened. So I think if we take the European perspective and we see now a century later how that evolved, well, they have become extremely strong in the US with their mentality. I don't want to do European mindset bashing as sometimes we do in this kind of conferences, but I think we can be proud of what we have, what we do, and we can be proud of the roots that we have here in Europe. And with my hat of Euronext, but also as a convinced European citizen, I think we should make sure that we have deep roots here in Europe. Also, for instance, looking at the Euronext listing, if you look at the one which was done by Nyxoah 3 years ago, well, half of the investors came from the US, half of the other half came from Europe. So it shows that US investors trust us, but you can also grow being here with a listing in Europe.
Yeah, Benoit, it is. We are hearing that the Euronext, has not the depth of Nasdaq and has not the liquidity of Nasdaq. And usually, when a company is listed on Euronext, this valuation is discounted compared to if it was in the US. On the other hand, we have a lot of money in Europe, right? We are 27 countries. It's not a problem of money, I would say. It's more a problem of how the money is used. How you at Euronext can you help the investors to have a more liquid Euronext in the future? When the window will reopen, it will reopen one day or another. So how could you help us to deal with that?
Yeah, well, that's indeed a point that we sometimes hear. Olivier was mentioning companies which today trade below their cash position. That's a reality in Europe, but it's also a reality in the US, and I think it's even worse in the US than in Europe. So the myth that your valuation is higher on Nasdaq than on Europe, it needs to be nuanced. But what we try to do at Euronext, well, is try to prepare as much as possible the entrepreneurs with pre-IPO programs like IPO Ready, and the new name of TechShare. We also launch different initiatives like the Tech Leader group, which is a kind of index within a segment within the listed companies where we want to support the leaders in the technology field, which are listed on Euronext, and with gaining additional opportunities to speak to investors and to have more visibility than when they are simply listed on our market. So we take these different initiatives to promote our champions and to make them even stronger. And at European side, from a more global perspective, we also see initiatives with global health tech funds, which are being launched. One speaks of even more than 1 billion euros, which might be raised by this new fund, which is coming up. So I think we are getting stronger and stronger at European level. Of course, in the US, they are further down the way than what we are, but I think we are recouping quite nicely on that difference.
And if you allow me to also maybe talk a little bit about liquidity. So if you look at Nyxoah, we are a company with very low liquidity. Now, on the other hand, if you look at our investor book, and I think that is also something I would like to share with the audience, if you're going and you're considering going public, I think this is something that you should never underestimate in how to compose your investor book when you go public. We were thinking, we have all the big names. You know, of all the big names, everyone knows that our story is a US story, that we need to enter the US market. So what do you see? We have, I think, 28 million shares, of which 20 or free floating, we trade on average 8,000 shares a day. And guess what? We trade this on Euronext, but also on Nasdaq. So there is no difference. And why is this? Because you can say we have loyal investors, they are waiting. But on the other hand, it also means that sometimes with 2,000 shares traded, stock goes down with 4%, which is ridiculous. I mean, so an advice that I can give is, when you compose your investor book, make sure that you find a good balance between institutional investors, hedge funds, European, US, and that you make sure that you also have liquidity that you set yourself up to see some liquidity. I think that's also very important.
Yeah, and that point of the very loyal investors is also important, because whenever you will need money again, well, you will need these loyal investors which will put again money in the story, because they believe in you, they have a long-term vision for you, and yeah, you will need these guys. If you only put hedge funds into your book, well, you probably have a bit more liquidity, but 2-3 years later, when you need additional money, well, when you will knock on the door of investors, no one will be available to fund you. So it's a good equilibrium that you have to find between all these types of investors.
Enrique, a last thought on how do you see the future? How do you see all the implementations of what Europe is putting in place? How do you see it, how it will change? How do you think it will change the ecosystem?
So I think from our end, something that probably will happen is follow-on investments, because we're seeing that during downturns like this one we're living through, the companies we invested in, sometimes they suffer to do the next round. And I think we are missing that part of the program. So we come in really early with non-dilutive, 3-4 million euros, then we do a bridge check from research to market. Then we come in with up to 15, and I think there is one step missing there. And we've been discussing internally, and I think it's been made public already. We will need something a little bit bigger coming next, like a 40-50 million kind of ticket. This is maybe something I would see as natural happening in the future.
A last word?
Yeah, well, times are tough, but I think it's also the good timing to be prepared for all the options. If the IPO is on your roadmap or potentially on your roadmap, I think it's the right moment to be prepared. You can do different things like IPO readiness exercises with your auditor, or you can follow the programs that we launch like IPO Ready. Do a gap analysis between where you should be when you want to be public and where you are today. Are you already publishing your accounts in IFRS? Stuff like that. I mean, it's the right moment to prepare yourself for the next step.
Olivier, if you had a dream for the European entrepreneurs for the future.
if I have a dream, so no, but first of all, I think going to rough waters, because that is the title, it can also be fun. I mean, it sounds very strange, but it's fun. It gives you more satisfaction navigating to something that is a little bit tougher than just going to still water. So that is one thing. If I have a dream, I think we should talk more with each other. We should be more proud. We should maybe take also something from the US spirit or mindset that they are having, what maybe we are missing a little bit. I keep looking at the European Commission and the European Bank and all these things. Make the money available, make it available in an easier way, show also more trust, and I'm sure we will do very well.
Thank you. I think we have time for 1 or 2 questions. I'm sure you have questions. I think also something which maybe we have heard during those rough waters, we have heard about shark funds, you know, those funds that are coming and they take a lot of equity for money just for you to survive. What do you think about that?
For me, well, it's a tough one. Huh? It's really a tough one, because it's a kind of finance opportunity of the last chance. I think as a company you should really consider this appropriately, thinking about all the consequences that this can bring in terms of diluting your existing investor base. I don't say it's a bad thing, but consider it well. Consider also the counterparty, because you have some of these players which are extremely aggressive. You have other ones which are a bit more conservative and have a more balanced point of view in this. If you would consider this as a listed company, I would say, well, communicate properly towards your investors on what will be the consequences of the financing. I remember 2 years ago there was a Belgian company, I think its market cap was 15 or 20 million euros, and they were about to raise 200 million euros with one of these funds. And well, the consequence would be a gigantic dilution of the existing shareholders. But they just promote it as being the nicest move that they did since the last 5 years. But yeah, today the company is almost bankrupt. So think about this kind of financings, and yeah, if you have no other options, well, do it in a very transparent way.
So to finish on an optimist note, I would say that we have the money in Europe. No, it's a question of having this money in the right direction, with this direction of the innovation, and we have all to think about that. How can we fuel this money in innovation? And I think this is something important for the future of innovation in Europe, because we have everything in hands. It's up to us. Thank you.